Good morning, student. Today I'm going to again start the chapter second. Topic is national income and related aggregate. This is part 2. In this video, I'm going to explain factor income, transfer income, domestic territory of a country, normal residence of a country, net factor income from abroad, concept of market price and factor cost, net indirect tax. Let me start with the factor income. Factor income is considered as a earning concept. Why? Because four factor of production, that are land, labor, capital and enterprise, they have to earn this money receipt. Okay, when these four factor of production offer their service, in return whatever money they receive, that is known as a factor income. Land gets rent, labor gets wages, capital gets interest and enterprise get profit. Most important thing about the factor income is that it is included in national income. Why? Because it increases flow of goods and services in the economy. Now, transfer income, it is known as a receipt concept. Why it is considered as a receipt concept? Other On the other hand, factor income is considered as a earning concept, because in transfer payment, a person without doing any work, any productive activities, without increasing the production of goods and services, he is just getting the money. Okay, its example. It is a very genuine income and a genuine type of monetary receipt. Like as a student, your father give you pocket money. This pocket money is the example of transfer payment. You are not contributing in family income, you are not rendering your service. Your father is giving whatever money to expend you, that is considered as a transfer income. So transfer income is such type of payment which is made to a person without contributing in production of goods and services. So what are example of transfer payment? Gift, donation, scholarship, pocket money, old age pension, unemployment allowances, charity, etc. Most important thing about transfer income is that it is not included in estimation of national income. Why? Because it is not going to increase the production of goods and services. Here, transfer income just a person is going to get. In return, he is not doing any productive activities. Okay, so here is explain how factor income are different from transfer income. First of all, transfer income are those income which are received by a person as a help, donation or charity, whereas factor income are those income which is received by the factor of production by rendering their service. In this way, factor income is earned income. On the other hand, transfer income is unearned income. Okay, and that is the reason transfer income are not included in the estimation of national income. So remember, only factor income are estimated in national income calculation. Transfer income are not calculated, not included. Okay. Now, here is given the definition of domestic income and national income. You can see both domestic as well as national income, both are the sum total of factor income. There is the basic difference is that domestic, those factor income is included in domestic income, that is generated within the domestic territory, while national income includes those factor income that is earned by normal residents. In this way, to understand these two concepts, we have to first of all understand the domestic territory of a country and the concept of normal residence. Okay, let me start with the first one. Meaning of domestic territory are economic territory. According to the United Nations, economic territory is the geographical territory administered by the government within which person, goods, capital circulate freely. Okay, so economic territory, the main criteria of the definition of economic territory is freedom of circulation of persons, goods and capital. Those parts of political frontier of a country where the country's government does not enjoy this freedom are not included in the economic territory of a country. For example, government of India does not enjoy such freedom in the foreign embassies located within the India. Okay, these foreign embassies are governed by their own government. Still they are located in Indian land, but they are not governed by Indian government, but they are governed by their own country. That is why they are not considered the part of domestic territory of India. Okay, so now let me understand what are included in the domestic territory of a country. Okay, in very simple language, domestic territory include three area. First of all, land area. Okay, second, water area. Third, air area. In land area, we include uh, all the political, yeah, political frontier. Okay, as well as all Indian embassies, consulate and Indian military establishment that is located in other countries. Okay, and in water area we include sea area on which India is having exclusive right, like the Indian peoples do the work of fishing. These area are used for oil and natural gas rigs. Okay, in the air area we include aircraft services operated by the residents like Air India. Air India provides its service across different countries, but whatever income is generated by Air India is the part of domestic income of our country. Okay, it doesn't matter Air India is providing its service between America to Canada, but its income is going to be included in domestic income of our country. Okay, let me understand with this slide. So domestic territory include political frontier and including territorial water of a country. Ships and aircraft operated by residents of the country across different part of the world. Example is given like Indian ships moving between Japan and Korea, passenger plane operated by Air India between England and Canada. These income generated by these Indian ships and aircraft is included in domestic income. Now, fishing vessels, oil, natural gas rings, floating platform operated by the residents of the country in international waters or engaged in extraction in areas in which the country has exclusive right of exploitation are included in domestic territory. For example, fishing boats operated by Indian fishermen in the international water of Indian Oceans are the part of domestic territory of India. Okay, next is embassies, consulate, military establishment of the country located abroad is the part of domestic territory of India. Here is given example, Indian embassy in United States of America is the part of domestic territory of India. Embassy of USA in India is not the part of domestic territory of India. It is the part of domestic territory of United States of America. So I think this concept has you are able to understand this concept. Okay, so remember domestic territory include three things: political frontier in which all activities done in India, plus all Indian embassies, consulate and military establishment located outside the India, that is also the part of domestic territory, plus sea area on which India is having exclusive right, plus Air India or any other aircraft that is operated by residents, Indian residents, that is their income is included in our domestic income. Now the second concept, normal residents. Now who are considered as a normal residents? For being normal residents, it is not necessary you have to born here. Okay, the person who born in India, they are considered as a citizen of India. Citizen of India and normal residents of India or normal residents of a country is differ concept. For becoming normal residents of a country, you needed to fulfill two basic conditions. First one is you have to fulfill first condition. If a person is staying more than 1 year, and second, his or her economic interest lies in this country, they are considered as a normal residence of that country. What do you mean by economic activity? Activity of production, consumption and investment. Okay. Now next, its explanation with this examples. Who are in this slide, first part explain who are considered as a normal residents, and second part explain who are not considered as a normal residents, means who are considered as a non-residents. Okay. So Indian working in a foreign embassies in India, Indians employed in any international organizations such as World Bank, Indian Monetary Fund, United Nation organizations are treated as residents of India. But the persons, foreign citizens who are working in these international organizations located in India will not be treated as residents of India. Okay, for example, suppose there is a Office of International Monetary Fund and five people are working there. Okay, 3 are Indians and 2 are American. So these are considered as a normal residents of India, and these 2 are not considered as a normal residents of our country. They are considered as a residents of America. Okay. Now, the foreign citizens who are living here more than 1 year and whose center of interest, economic interest lies in India, they are also considered as a normal residents of our country. Okay, who are not considered? So, foreigner working in India, Indian embassies in Canada and Japan, foreigner working in World Health Organization or International Monetary Fund or United Nation Organization, they are not considered as a normal residents of India. They are considered as a non-residents of India. Ambassadors in India from rest of the world, they are also non-residents of India. Okay, the technical expert who come in India more than period of less than 1 year, they are also non-residents of India. Okay. So in one line, all the Indians who are working in international organizations, that office is located in India, they are known as a normal residents of our country. Okay. All the foreigners who stay in India more than 1 year and economic interest lies in this country, they are considered as a normal residents of our country. Okay. Plus all the ambassadors who are working outside the country, they are the considered as a normal residents of our country. Okay. And all the ambassadors in India who are working in embassies of other country, they are not considered as a normal residents of India, they are considered as a non-residents of India. Plus all the visitors, travelers, the person who are coming here to taking medical facility, students, these are non-residents of India. Okay. Now next concept is net factor income from abroad. In short, it is known as a NFIA. So NFIA is the difference between factor income earned by the normal residents of a country from abroad and factor income earned by non-residents in domestic territory of country. In equation, NFIA is equal to factor income from abroad subtracted by factor income to abroad. It is very important concept when we are converting domestic income into national income. Okay. When we want to calculate NI, then we have to add NFIA in domestic income. In this way we will get national income. So in this way, this is very important topic. Now next topic is factor cost and market price. What is factor cost and what is market price? So when we are estimating national income and related aggregates, monetary value of final goods and services can be estimated in two ways: factor cost and market price. Let me understand in detail. First one is factor cost. What is factor cost? Already we had learned. Okay. Factor income is known as a factor cost. Whatever income is earned by fourth factor of production, that is known as a factor income, and it is also known as a factor cost. Why we use this term factor cost? Because it is the expenditure that is done by the producer for the production of particular good. So it is the cost of producing something. That is why it is also known as a factor cost. And factor cost is the sum total of rent, interest, profit and wages. Okay. Now, market price. Market price is that price at which a commodity is sold in the market. In another way, it is the price what the producer pay for the commodity. Suppose if you want to purchase commodity X, if you are paying 12 rupees for it, then this is the market price. Market price is that price which we pay for purchasing any good or any service. Okay, now how we calculate market price? When net indirect tax is included in factor cost, then we get market price. Now what is net indirect tax? So to understanding market price, we have to understand net indirect tax. So NIT is the difference between taxes and subsidy. In the equation, NIT is equal to indirect tax minus subsidy. Okay. Suppose when indirect tax is imposed, its result is that price is going to be high. When subsidy is provided by the government, then price is going to be lower. That is the impact of indirect tax and subsidies on the market price. If indirect tax are imposed by the government, then price is going to be high. If subsidies are provided by the government, then price is going to be lower. That is written here. Taxes on goods tend to raise the market price of the good. Subsidies tend to lower the market price of the good. Let me understand with an example. Now, in this page, you can see that firm A is producing commodity X with the help of four factor of production. He is providing rent to land, that is 20 rupees. He pays wage worth 35 rupees to labor, and he paid interest worth 30 rupees to capital, and entrepreneurs get profit worth 15 rupees. In this way, in the production of X good, total cost is 100 rupees. Yani production of X good, the expenditure on the production of X good is worth 100 rupees. If producer want to produce X good, he have to expend rupees 100. How we had calculated? By adding these factor cost. Now suppose government impose 12 rupees as GST on X good. So firm have to pay rupees 12 to government, but firm A will charge this rupees 12 from the consumer. So consumer will have to pay 112 for good X. So in this way, factor cost is only 100 rupees. Now GST is 12 rupees. In this way, market price become 112. So it is clear now कि when indirect tax or GST is imposed, it is going to increase the price of a product. Here you can see factor cost is 100. Already I explained in the previous slide. Now 12 rupees is imposed as a GST by the government. So firm is going to add these 12 rupees in the factor cost. In this way, market price become equal to 112 rupees. Okay. Now what will be impact of subsidy? Suppose subsidy. What is subsidy? The subsidy is economic assistance given by the government to the firm. Now we had learned now factor cost. The producing X good, there is the cost of 100 rupees. Suppose government provides subsidy worth 40 rupees. So in this way, the market price become rupees 60. Okay. And for it, I'm going to give you example of cylinder. You know now, the cylinder that consumer get, that we get, that in your family you are having, that is subsidized cylinder, that is available at the rupees of 546. Suppose for producing one cylinder, if the cost is 800 rupees and government is providing subsidy worth 254. It's mean we are getting, that is why we are getting the cylinder at the rupees of 540, because this subsidy is going to reduce the price. Okay, but it is available only for household sector, yani only for consumer. For business purpose these cylinders are not available. So who are having restaurant and they are using cylinder, so they have to use non subsidized cylinder, and these subsidized cylinder is available suppose at the rupees of 1000 market price. So how it become 1000? Because the factor cost is only 800, but government had imposed GST worth 200. In this way, the price, market price of this product become 1000. This is the impact of market price, and this is the impact of subsidies and indirect tax on the price of a good. Okay, student, thank you.